This is ContactTalkRadio.com. Consciousness in action. And you are taking action into your consciousness by tuning into Contact Talk Radio.
And on TuneIn.com, Hing.fm, and UpSnap Mobile.
Contact Talk Radio.
Welcome to Transformation with Tara Sutphen. Tara Sutphen is the author of Blame It on Your Past Lives and Soul Agreements, 3 audio CD series, metaphysical meditations, sourcing series, and sleep programming. Tara has also collaborated with Emmy Award-winning Shane Stanley and Marla Maples on numerous DVDs. Tara Sutphen is a master in the psychic sciences. If you'd like to find out more about Tara's work, upcoming seminars, and meditations to help you fulfill your dreams, visit her website at tarasutphen.com.
Welcome to Transformations with Tara. This is Tara Sutphen. And my guest today is Chatter Estop. And he says that he is a comedian at heart and a masked vigilante by night. And he's an author. He's 20 years old and he's written 2 sci-fi fantasy books. The first novel is called Cole's Odyssey Alpha, Enter the Bandits, and it's 705 pages long. And his second novel is Cole's Odyssey Omega, Enter the Bandits, and it's 642 pages long. And it's about 2 twins, a set of twins who adopt the same name and anyway, and travel around, I think. So we're going to learn more about his characters and book, and welcome, Chatter Estop.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be on the program today.
Yeah, thanks. Anyway, so somebody was telling me that you were 19, and then so I got it right. I wasn't flubbing on your bio. You're now 20. But I mean, you are like you really are riding up a storm. So, which is fun, you know, it's really fun for me to see, somebody your age just really love books and want the book, publishing to stay alive, because I really don't think that everybody really enjoys reading on their Kindle so much. And, we want to see books come back, even though they're heavy and hard to travel around with them. It's always nice to kind of sit around and read a book.
Well, now I feel bad. I feel like I betrayed the cause because my books are also available on Kindle.
Well, no, that's good. It is good. No, it's good to have them on Kindle, but I'm just saying from the author's standpoint that, you know, kids don't think so much of writing as much anymore. You know, that's more blogs. Although, you should probably have a blog on your characters as well. You know, keep everybody going.
Wikia for my whole series. It's quite big, so it's taking a while, but I'm chipping away at it on the daily.
Right. Now tell me what inspired you to write.
Okay, now, what inspired me to write? It's a bit of a big question, but I guess what really got me into it is I would just watch movies and TV shows, like, I guess I shouldn't mention anything around the air specifically, but I would just watch it and be like, man, this is like really poorly done. And everyone else would be like, oh man, I'm having a great time, being like, I could do better. And they got so, like my mom, she got so tired of me just saying like, I could do better. She's like, then do better. Fine, I will. And then, like 1,500 pages later, I have 2 published books, granted self-published, but I really wanted to make a story that I wanted to read. Because when I was a kid, I did not like reading until I found this one series. And ever since I found that, it brought me into the whole world of books. And I wanted to make that experience for other people. I wanted that one book that challenged all the tropes, that was something new and exciting that could get people excited for reading again, like I had discovered when I was a kid.
Right. That one set of books, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. What books were they?
Am I allowed to mention that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, it was
Use
this
your mouth.
series called Akiko, about this girl who's taken off the planet by aliens and she gets to go on adventures.
Mm-hmm. How many books did they have? Like a series of 5 or 12 or?
I would assume like probably 8.
Mm-hmm.
It was a substantial thing, because I came in late, like after the series was already done. So I got to see like all of them.
Right, right. So it just hooked you in and you got to read and keep reading about the same person. Like they became your friends through the books.
Exactly. They had characters that, grew and evolved, which you don't really see as much as you'd hope in TV shows, movies, etc. You see a character, you know the character. They don't really change as much. And that's also something that I like to work on myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My daughter Cheyenne, she really got into a series. They were kind of magical fantasy books. And the author was in Australia. And so she loved everything. I can't remember exactly the author's name, but she just loved these books. I mean, we had to like hunt for them. But she used to read through the airports. She would walk and read, and I would just kind of lead her along because she'd be so engrossed in what she was reading. She was really funny. Yeah, I mean, my kids were all really prolific readers, but which was nice for me because I really love to read too. And it's all about the books. And she though covets my books. It's like the boys are out. She wants all my books. If she can have them someday.
Great fan to have.
She is. And it's all good. It's all good. As far as like liking the same things and enjoying books. So now I liked a couple of the things that you say. They really like intrigue me as far as I want to question you.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, you said that, you stumbled across something you liked more than laughter, and it was to create tears. I wanted to know what you meant by that. Yeah.
I don't know, like, okay, for example, I'm a bit of a comedian, a little bit jokey, so I'll make like people laugh a lot. And one day for my grandmother's birthday, I believe you know her, I sent her this poem, and she teared up and started crying when she was reading it. And it wasn't like the fact that like, I'm not some evil guy like, oh yes, cry, I'm not that kind of person. I was really proud of the fact that I had written something that had touched her so deeply, that she had started to cry. Cause it's not exactly an easy thing to do. And that's something I've always wanted to do. I don't want like a James Bond sort of show where you watch it and it's just like, oh, it's action. I know he's going to be through at the end. I want there to be fear involved. I want there to be an emotional attachment. I don't want people to worry about the characters as they go on their journey while still having a good time. I want it to be like a slice of life, but a way better life,
Yeah. Yeah, now it's interesting because, I'm sent all the books through the publicist. And everything is sent to me. I have so many books that are coming that are all the new books and stuff. Now when, talking about his grandma, I'm very close to her. Her name is Nadine, and she was my first mother-in-law, through Willie's dad. And, it's really, I saw your books in her house, and he has the most beautiful, I really loved the covers. The covers were incredible. And since his characters are twins, what he has in the first book and the second book was the faces that come together on the covers. It's a half and half, and you match them. And I thought that was so beautiful and clever. It was very clever, and it caught my attention right away. It was really cool.
I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah,
Because
and so I thought, oh, well, I'm going to have him on my radio show because, I want to hear kind of what your plans are, because you're so young and you really have a lot of time to develop all of this. And so I really liked the first. Now, I was thinking that the books, like, my God, they're like heavy and big. Like, you have a lot of pages in each one.
They are.
We're going to have to talk about that too.
Yeah. If you want to know what that is, it's, I feel like most books sort of play out like a movie, or at least a mini series, but, my books play out more like, a TV show, with each chapter being about an episode, and they all have, each chapter has little breaks in between. Mostly that's to convey that the perspective has changed, or time has passed, but it also gives the reader a nice little break, because they're pretty bulky chapters, because they are meant to be pretty much like a television episode. They have a beginning, a middle, and end, and they all sort of tie together.
Yeah, it is. It's really interesting how you're creating them. Now, so you would like to see them be sold as a TV show maybe someday, or a movie,
I think that.
What do you think? Right. Yeah. So that's what you're starting to work on, like developing scripts for them, or asking your other friends to create scripts. Sometimes it's easier if, like, script writers could, you ask somebody to do the script, because then, your books live and they're doing the script while you're working on another one. Now, so how many books are you going to have with this series?
All right. With the Cold Odyssey series, there's going to be 2 more books, for each side, because they are 2 trilogies. There's also a spin-off that I'm working on as I'm writing the second book, which talks about 2 almost throwaway characters from the main series. And what I mean by throwaway are characters that they only show up for a tiny little bit, and they normally wouldn't have that much impact. But it's a spin-off series called A Tale of Those We Hurt, where you go into it knowing that each character they lose their life pretty much unceremoniously and without impact through the actual story. And not only do you get to know about them, you get to realize that these are people, right? Even the characters who don't necessarily have names that are pointed out, they're still people. And at the same time, it helps bridge a few gaps and clear up a few things as you follow their lives leading up to their arrival in the story, which I think is a little bit of a cool concept. Because if something, I come up with an idea and it doesn't fit into the actual book, generally I can find some way to fit it into their own story, which saves me a lot of, like, deleted scenes, if you could call them that. And I really like the idea of adding impact to the little people in a book.
Yeah. So what? Oh, so what? The sub characters, or?
Yes, I would even call them sub characters. Yeah.
So everyone has meaning. I like that, actually,
because
I do believe that everyone has meaning in everybody's peripheral life as well. It's we all have a purpose, and even though people don't think that they have an outward purpose in people's lives, usually, that's not really true. Like somebody dies and they didn't know that they were impacting someone else on such a level. It might have been how hard they worked. It might have been, but people don't know how they inspire other people.
Exactly. There's even a quote from my book along those lines by this man. I will. By a man named Kyer. He says, in life, you can't choose if you follow, but you can choose who you follow.
Oh.
Which I think is very nice, because whether it's a leader, religion, a workplace, whatever you do in life, whatever you quest for, you're always living for some sort of goal. And you can't stop that. As a person, you always strive to be something, to accomplish, to make something of yourself. But you can choose specifically what you do in life, and that is always up to you.
Yeah, I agree. Anyway, yeah, and I believe that you create your own reality, and with you writing so prolifically like you're doing, it's really, there's always a chance when you're writing at this level that you will actually make it. Because it's just, just, you have a passion for it. And I mean, it is very evident. I just thought it was so cool too, that you say that it's appropriate for teens plus. And to whereas, you're already writing for the youth. So, because that's who you must carry with you in your work. Always, a lot of people miss that. When they're writing, they write for their own age group, or they sing for their own age group, or they act for their own age group. And the bottom line is, like women being sexy for the men of the time. No, it's usually it's for the younger generation to be inspired or to be interested in, their work at that point. So it's always good to bring the youth. So, cause you're 20, you have to bring, the youth is, they're just being born. A lot of them. So yeah, you make it so it comes that this generation is somewhat frozen because of your characters and what they're experiencing. Plus, with it being a sci-fi fantasy, you can do a lot of fun things.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of fun things.
Right.
Okay.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Okay.
And then
Thank
I'll
you.
ask my question.
I did try to write for the youth, make it appropriate. Because have you ever heard of a program called Battle of the Books?
No,
It's this nationwide. It might be more than one nation. I think it's just an American thing, though. United States. Where they choose 9 or 12 books. I forget I think it's 12. And then it is. Okay, because they assign groups of 4 students. Some schools require participation. Some schools just encourage it. But they'll make a group of 4 people, and then they'll give you 3 books each, and you figure out, granted you can read as many as you want, but generally you try to keep it 3 books each, and you read, because they have a list of 12, and you read your 3, and then you compete to share knowledge about the book, sort of like a Jeopardy thing, and it's harmless, it's a little fun thing, but it got me back into reading after, the Akiko series finished. And ever since then, I've been not only trying to get the team, but I've been writing to get into that program because I believe in it, I wanted to give something that students could read, adults could read, young adults could read. I wanted a lot of people to be able to read this and have it affect their lives. Because it's a big book. You've seen that. And there are a lot of characters, and I want people to find a little bit of themselves in at least a few characters. Because a lot of movies and shows cover the same standard relationships, the same standard relationship problems. And there are a lot of things that I saw in high school that I just didn't see anywhere on TV. Such as, I haven't seen before, in a relationship where one person is in love and the other person still likes the other person, but just, it isn't there. They don't want to be in a relationship, but they still want to be friends. But because they work and live, go to school so closely to each other and have the same friend group, they can't really end it because then that isolates them. And then they're being dragged through a relationship and they're not exactly sure what to do, and they're becoming a little bit hostile. And it's a very real situation that, tons of people experience each year, but no one really talks about it. No one talks about solutions, etc. And I like to do that. There are quite a few bizarre relationships in my book, and that's just the relationship example. There are lots of situations that I would love people to apply to their own lives, not as a guide per se, because everyone's life is different. What works for someone may not work for someone else. But I want to give them an outlook. Let them know that, like, hey, this isn't just you, and there are things that can be done. And I want them to get an outside perspective on what their own situation may look like.
Right. Well, which is great. It's a beginning, middle, and an end. Whereas, there's solutions and decisions in everything. But for some reason, a lot of times, even Americans who have really a large hope process, in life, they've lost it. There's so many people that lose that solution process. I don't know quite why, but, I'm working on that on my teams, my two teams that I work with. That's a lot of what we are working on is the solutions of the world of really the mind process. That's why I do a lot of clinical hypnotherapy and, stuff. But interesting that you're doing this through your book already. And that you've noticed this on your own.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so you have the characters solve some of their problems, or no, not all the time?
Like I said, my story is sort of a slice of crazy life. So a lot of times problems get solved, sometimes in a good way, sometimes in a bad way. Sometimes they persist, sometimes problems can merge, separate into different issues, because it's never just a one problem thing, People don't wake up and like, oh man, too bad I have that one single problem in my life. They merge. And some, can be, erupted and then closed in the same exact chapter, and some span, several, and they evolve. They do. Like, for example, Cole, the, main character of, well, I guess both of them, but Cole Omega, pretty early on, in his story, meets this girl named Trace, who calls herself Fox. She becomes an integral character. She might actually get a little bit more page time, I guess, than Cole. Or if anything, it's pretty close. They're really close together, and they form a romantic relationship pretty early on. And it starts off like a little bit rocky, and then it gets rockier. But then they bond a little bit, and he takes this bonding as that he feels a love for her, he really wants her, because he does. He wants her in his life, he respects her, he wants to take care of her, etc. And at the same time, he's kind of an idiot, so he needs to be taken care of quite a bit. But in her eyes, he's just a friend. And I just talked about this situation a second ago. But she can't really do anything, and it sort of escalates towards hostilities in this second book, especially because there is a 2-month time gap between the books. And you can see that things have sort of gone a little bit crazy, especially because of other problems in her life interfering. And how that resolves, I think is definitely going to leave an impact. And I want people to really think about it, because it's not going to be anything anyone's expecting.
Okay. So now, okay, so you have the twins. Tell me a little bit about the characters. Like, you have these twins, and are they separated at birth, or do they grow up together? What is a little bit of the storyline?
Okay, so with Alpha, the actual story, past the prequel chapter that takes place 30 years before, which both have, Cole wakes up from a crash, and he's extremely confused. He's looking around at, like, the remains of this vehicle, and he's very confused. He's very scared. He doesn't know why he's scared, but he's just like, I have to leave. I have to get out of here. I don't know why. I just need to go right now. And he looks at his hand, and he sees this tag that has Cole scratched onto it, and he, like, repeats the name, and he's like, yeah, that sounds really familiar. I'm Cole? Yeah, no, that sounds great. That's my name. So he, rummages through the wreck just a little bit to find this thing that he knows he needs, which, is a case. I won't spoil what's inside of it. And to sort of free up his hands, he tosses the tag into the wreckage and he runs off. Now, with Cole Omega, it starts off a little bit after, with that Cole, having woken up after being rescued from the crash because he was hidden under a little bit of rubble that was being taken by a mechanic scavenger named Dan. And he had saved Cole's life. Now, Dan had no idea that there was another person who had run away from the crash, and the first Cole who ran didn't know that there was someone else under the debris. I should say there was a third person in the vehicle, and the first Cole who ran off did see the body. And later, when he realized he had a brother, I'm sorry, this is Omega. Sorry, Cole from Omega, realized later that he had a brother, only to find out that there was a skeleton at the crash dressed similarly to him, and he just assumed that that was his brother, because, they're dressed the exact same, though he couldn't really see anything because it was a charred corpse. So now they both take on the same name, because Cole Omega was found with the tag, and he goes through the same thought process. Yes, Cole, that sounds like my name. So now you have two people who don't remember anything about themselves, who are found with incredibly, I don't want to say high tech, but think of what it would be like to have a tailor-made shirt in the Wild Wild West, People would be a little bit like, oh, where'd that come from? Handmade versus made by machine, they stand out. He knows he's different somehow. And he knows he's alone. And he doesn't know exactly where to go, what to do. He can't get his memory back. So they both start having to figure out what to do in life. Now, Cole Omega, he doesn't really care that much. I mean, he's upset that he can't remember, but he goes out, he's making friends, he's getting in relationships, he's trying to find jobs, he's trying to make his way through life with a bit of a smile. He's a little bit carefree, he reacts emotionally more than anything. While Cole Alpha, all he's trying to figure out is where he came from, and he treats the world as very hostile, because he's not very calculating, but he definitely takes things into consideration before acting, which makes him a little bit off-putting to other people, because he comes off as a little bit rude. So they're not the same character. I want to stress that very much. They're two very different characters. And it's quite interesting to see them interacting with characters, and then seeing that character start interacting with the other Cole without knowing that they've switched Coles, and then having the Coles just think they're weird, because this book is filled with weird people. I will say that.
Yeah.
It's like, it's just another weirdo, okay.
Right. So were they close at one time and they don't remember? Or they were babies?
No, you follow their journey, because both books take place over the course of 2 weeks, starting from the crash, going chronologically, to the end of the second week, where a certain event happens that separates them. But until they're separated, generally their stories take place around the same city, called Mudstick. But generally they keep within the same location on the map. That's called the Corner, because the part of the map rests right below the North Territory, just west of the Bandit Territory. There's a bit of a fault that's almost at a 90-degree angle to their side, so they look like the corner of the map. So it's called the Corner. It's not exactly a small location. It's about 150 miles across, but with only about 5 or 6 places to go, they do a lot of overlapping at points.
Oh, okay. So it takes place in 2 weeks. It's like 1,400 pages, 1,300 and something. So it takes place in 2 weeks, within 2 weeks, the books.
Uh-huh.
Interesting.
I should say that the chapters don't exactly go day by day. There's one chapter in Alpha that takes place over 3 days, and then there's a chapter that there's one day that I think takes up an entire act, or almost an entire act, which is 3 chapters. But they do both go chronologically over the same time span, and you can definitely see a lot of events. Especially, it's fun when there's an event happening and they're both party to it, and you can see different, like, keys that let you know, like, oh, this is when that happened. Like, there's this siege of Mudstick at one point, and there's a cannon-like sound that erupts over the entire town. And even though this happens at different times in both chapters, it still is talked about. So you can tell what each Cole was doing at the exact same time, and it gives you some perspective, like, oh, that's right. They're in the same place doing the same exact thing. And then you can sort of backtrack and figure out how close they were to actually meeting each other. And they never do, by the way, I should point that out. They do not meet each other.
No, they don't. Well, you're going to have to do that maybe because that's probably what everybody's waiting for, is them to, if nothing else, touch upon each other and not know who each other is.
Mm-hmm. The first book sort of sets up the world, sets up who they are, and how they get kind of roped into this thing called the Faction War, which is the sequel, Cole's Odyssey Alpha and Omega, the Faction War, where basically the whole sort of land is not ruled by really a government. They were just sort of under the unofficial rule of these 4 people who have this very futuristic sort of armor, futuristic weaponry, so they're basically gods among men, and they seem to have a connection to both Coles, and it's not a good connection. And because of this, I don't want to spoil anything to potential readers, but they lose their sort of power because a rumor of their death, even though they did not die, circulates, and people have been on the edge of, like, we want more power for a long time. This is not a new thing, it's been brewing. So it opens up this faction war. In the sequel is how they gain power within their own factions, or rise to the ranks, I should say, to get their own faction. And then in the second book, they are both aware of each other by the end of the book, and they know that there is someone else with their face taking on the name Cole, doing other things. But at that point, they're on opposing sides. And then the third book, The Three Kingdoms, down when it's to 3 different factions remaining, that's where it gets a bit tense, because they realize that they're having to fight their brother, but they've grown so far apart and so separately by that point that they can't just throw that all away and just talk. Which is I guess a moral, yeah, that goes throughout my entire book, is that most conflict spurs from a lack of communication, and seeing the world as black and white. And I feel like that's a very big problem, because there are not real villains in my book. There are just people. Someone you might label a villain from one book, you read the other, and then you realize, you know, his motivations, why he did what he did, what that event looked like from the other side.
Right.
I really want to push forward that these are just people. They're not, you know, faceless minions who attack a superhero. They're people trying to live for themselves, their family, their cause. They all have different motivations, wants, needs, desires. And when people fail to see that, that's where conflict erupts.
Right. Yeah. Have you always been interested, like, in psychology or sociology? Because you have a lot of built-in interests, you know, with this character development.
I do. I'm a little bit of a weird guy. So when I was growing up, I would do, not college classes, but I would look at some seminars. I would read quite a bit of literature about it, because, you know, I didn't want to get a psychology degree, but I wanted to figure out, like, what was off about me, that maybe I could, like, fix myself to help, like, fit in or something. And then later, once I discovered about myself, I was like, man, I like myself, you know, but I still wanted to know about other people, so I continued studying. And I believe it gives me a bit of a out-of-the-box perspective on life. I pick up on a few, nuances of social interaction that I think really anyone can see if they just know to look for it. And that does help me by writing quite a bit.
Yeah, no, I really like how you said the lack of communication between people. You know, I find that people, you know, there's a certain element where people don't want to look bad, or there's something about where they won't communicate what they're really feeling or what they really want. And it's not that you have to be abrasive about about desires or what you really want just on a day-to-day basis, of your life to go in a forward direction. But people are so stuck on all of it. It's really interesting to watch.
It is.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It is. I mean, and it usually stems from communication, and where so many people really don't know what is happening with somebody else's life, but yet they're going to take it and they're going to run with it. Whatever the emotion is, or sometimes it can be physical things as well. They tend to like create enemies with people I mean, it's just human life, I guess, but it's been an interesting process to watch. Resentment and anger and frustration and anxiousness over wanting to control other people, yet they never communicated what they needed or wanted, or even that their concept of what this person has done to them or what the problem is ever. It's mind-boggling sometimes to me.
It's,
the communication styles that people have.
This actually ties in pretty well to Nicole from Alpha. As I said before, he's a bit he is a bit abrasive. At the very beginning of the book, he has a holier than thou concept. He even calls the natives barbarians a few times, and he sort of isolates himself from other people because of this. The only reason he really makes it through is because he has people like Jack and Kyre who are sort of propelling his social status forward because they see a potential in him. Other than that, he finds himself a little bit more alone, much more so than Cole Omega does when he is helpful, friendly. He's a little bit quirky at times, but and he can be sarcastic as well. He can be oh so very sarcastic, but he's still very well liked. And the other Cole isn't as much at the beginning, but as he lives in this world, he realizes that he is not the end-all, be-all of human beings, and he changes. There is a definite change within his character throughout the story, with a lot of characters as well, because they do grow and evolve. For example, there's this character Jack, who I just mentioned, and when the book starts, he's snarky, he's confident, he's rude, he assumes things, and my mom hated this character. But then by the end of the book, he's snarky and rude and he assumes things, but in a slightly better way. And my mom still hates him, but in a different sort of hate. And I love to see emotions that people feel for my characters change so drastically over the course of my book.
That's interesting that your mom is getting emotionally involved.
It's going to come to me and be like, hey, when does he die? I'm so glad that you like my book.
Yeah, your mother says that. Oh, great. Yeah. Oh, fun. That's fun. So now, but the thing is that, so you're going along with his idiosyncrasies to create kind of, the disdain of him, to whereas, I feel that, people that are too friendly, of course, like what is it that, sometimes they're not, creating enough self, aspiration for themselves, or their goals aren't in line. They're being fed by other people instead of actually feeding themselves. And then you have people who feed themselves too much and they don't aspire to be liked by anybody because they're just too self-absorbed. We have all these dichotomies within our psyche that are pretty interesting to try to balance, because it is kind of a fine balance of things, and what someone needs, other people don't need as much. But, so that's what you're rounding out in these characters, it sounds like.
And they do have like motivations. Like Jack is not just arrogant for the sake of being arrogant. He is arrogant for the sake of isolation. He's not there to make friends, because for his own goals, they aren't only going to hold him back, they're going to make it much more difficult for him in the future. I can't explain why. Because it's going to be a spoiler for, I think, until the third book, or if not, very late second book. But forming attachments for him is not that great. So because of that, he spawns this, very hostile sort of, not stigma, that's not the right word, but he's not very well liked.
Right. But, and it sounds like you know, I mean, because of not being well liked, and this is the one that your mom said she didn't like him at all. You know, she wanted him out
there
of the
are a
book.
few characters my mom just wants gone from the book.
Right, but no, that rounds out life though. I mean, you know, because that there is always bullies and there are always, people that are, you know, I mean, that trip over their own feet. So, you know, that they're not liked in society. So it makes it much more interesting, your book, I'm sure. So to see them grow or to lapse. Yeah, no, it sounds like you're having a lot of fun.
I am, especially because, Jack is very close friends with Cole. He forms sort of a devil on the shoulder.
Right, but which Cole? Which Cole? 'Cause
Alpha.
I know there too. Alpha. So Alpha is the mean one or the nice one?
In terms of Cole, they're both quite nice, by the end of the book, I should say, because Cole Omega, he's walking around, he's like, I probably have a life I should get back to, but, I don't care. And he's going around, he's trying to make friends, he's trying to make the most of it, and Alpha, he's trying to get back, and he's not forming as many attachments.
Okay, so Jack is Alpha's friend.
He is, yeah.
Okay, so he's more of a confidant to one person then.
Mm-hmm. He's the second one as well, because Alpha has two friends that he keeps close. Another one is named Ken, who is pretty much the anti-Jack. He's undisciplined, carefree. He doesn't even have a home, really. He meets Cole sort of, I wouldn't say as a beggar, but as a hired hand whose hiring is running out pretty fast. He's like, hey, do you have a job opening? Sort of deal. And they play off of each other quite a bit. Because Cole, you know, he feels a little bit alone in this world that he still doesn't quite understand. So even though he doesn't really want to admit it at the beginning, he is seeking companionship and guidance. And that's where he gets it from. Jack, who's a little bit cold-hearted, we need to get this done because it has to be done. Sorry about the means. And then you have Ken, who's like, well, you know, I'm not really the strategist type, but I like to keep people happy. So you get these conflicting orders, or not orders, but ideas that Cole is being given. And in the end, it's always up to his character. But I definitely like the dynamic that they have set up, and they do play off of each other quite well. I really enjoy writing their interactions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so how many characters are in the book? Books, I should say.
Maybe faster to talk about every character not in my book. There are quite a few.
Yeah.
Let's see, if I pull up, let's see, I have it on my computer. The first index, so just for the first book, and keep in mind these are just characters who have a substantial part. I have 58. Right, okay, and then I believe I have 80-something, if you add in people who are given a name, and even then there are a few characters who are not named during the, events of the story. So it's quite packed, but at the same time, it's not nearly as confusing as you would think. Even my mom, who, you know, has trouble remembering my name at some points, isn't ever confused. It's like, oh, who's this again? Which is pretty great. I love that I've been able to accomplish that. I completely mean to toot my own horn there.
Okay. Oh yeah. No, it sounds like it's, you know, like you're creating a whole village, really. Yeah, that the main characters are interacting in their society, but only for 2 weeks. It's really fascinating, actually. Yeah, I can't wait to read it more. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, not like I've had a lot of time in Alaska to be reading, you know, the 1,300 pages of books.
It get back to me in like 4 years once it's finished. Tell me how the opening chapter is.
Right, there you go. No, but I do. I think it's great that you're doing it. And, I could see you taking it so much further, which is really, wonderful. Really, Chatter. You have a lot to, aspire to here upcoming. Create more of the village. So it's on Earth. It's not on, a planet. You have it all on Earth.
It's hard. It's hard to say because if I say yes or no.
Oh yeah, you don't have that. I know. You're doing you're doing the whole gamut. I'm feeling.
Gamby, yeah. It's in this thing. I just like at the moment it might change, but right now I've just dubbed it like the Gambiverse, which right now it's sitting at 13 books outside of Cole's Odyssey that span for about 1,000 years after Cole's Odyssey. But most of them take place before, and most of those take place on Earth. But a little event, and each book comes with a chapter 0 that sets up the world that the Gambiverse really entails. Basically our future, or a future that will no longer happen, which will be explained much further on. It is quite complicated, but it sets up this whole world and this cataclysmic event. That is a culmination of previous books, though you definitely do not need to read those books to understand what's happening, comes together and sort of creates this, when I say new word, don't take that literally, but a new world, whereas it's only, children. And what I can say is that's because, they're close to the Earth, but they're only loosely tied to reality, because they have not been seated long enough on Earth to really gain a strong connection. Because anyone who had a strong connection, they could not make this transition. It's too brutal. They're ripped too far apart, I should say. But since they have a loose connection, they can sort of float alongside. And the thing is that the younger you are, the more of you was kept with this sort of transition. So even though there are a few teenagers, most of them are pretty much catatonic. And useless. So it's this world that starts out just based around, children. And you think like, man, a lot of them would die. Yeah, quite a few too. I had to look up like population statistics to, get a good idea about how many people, would be left, etc. And then marking down, population. So we actually do have the, year 30 population of the entire continent.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So so you've done a lot of statistical work as well as, well, I mean, it shows.
I definitely want my book to be grounded in reality as much as possible without making it, too boring.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Anyway, so do you have, so is marriage a big thing in the book, or, like you were saying, like some of the, solutions are, but what is it? And so it all becomes like the kids are the future of tomorrow, they're definitely the gatekeepers, and the children of tomorrow are the servants of the world, I mean, you will all inherit the earth type of thing. So you start that kind of mind sociology part of writing. Do you set that in pretty early? And
I do, yes. The characters, they do come from children, and they're born in quite a hostile world, which accomplishes two things. The first is that you have a child mindset that, though it does mature, doesn't exactly leave. So yeah, people act a little bit more rationally than they normally would, or irrationally than they normally would. And you have more hostile tendencies. For example, at one point, Cole, Alpha, is facing off against this person, Lark, and they're in this hotel hallway, and it's a high tension moment. I also love to play off of tropes and defeat my own drama. I love setting up a very drama-filled scene and then completely ruining it and reminding you that oh yeah, there's a world still happening outside of these people. So they're having a very high tense scene in this hallway. It's a life or death stakes. They're shouting at each other. They're bringing up old memories. And one of the hotel doors opens, and this guy is like, I am trying to have a conversation with my wife. So just kill each other or leave. Jeez, people these days. And he slams the door, goes back into his hotel. And it makes us realize, like, these people having a life or death battle. And this guy's like, oh, it's a minor annoyance. These two yelling in the hallway. It really turns out. The second thing it accomplishes is that there's a big generation gap between the first generation and the second generation. And not just in time lapse, but as life and how they have their outlook. Because though more people died when the aura, by the way, was the cataclysmic event, that's what they call it, when the aura passed and all the kids had to figure things out, they died quite quickly. But they moved on, they made towns, they made vehicles, they found ways to move on. And the second generation, they come into a world that already has these things, yet they seem to be a little more lawless. So the first generations, they look at that and they say like, oh, they don't know how good they have it. They don't have to fear that when they wake up, someone from their party is going to be gone. They don't know if they're going to run out of food. They have all these things. And then the second generation, they look at things like, well, when you were a kid, you had hope. Things were getting better all the time. You were discovering like, oh, now we have a shelter, now we have this, and people were dying less and less frequently. We don't have that. Now we just have a world that's like torn up by your guys' war, and it creates a sort of hostility between the two generations.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that happens in real life. So I think that's interesting that you're addressing that in just in a fictional novel way, but it sounds like you have deeper messages that are going to be running through the books.
Yeah, I didn't want to be way too preachy. I mean, this isn't like a Dora the Explorer where each chapter asks them to talk about what they learned. But I wanted it to be grounded in reality. I wanted it to be real, because when they read it, I don't want them to feel like they're being preached to. I want them to feel like they're talking to a friend and that they're gaining insight because of that.
Oh, I love that. Love that. Taking it to the next level. So now you can buy the book through Amazon, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So through Amazon now, do you have a website that you have?
I don't have a website. I have an author page on Amazon. I have a Goodreads account. Facebook, of course.
Right. So at Chatter Estop, and so Estop is Estop, E-S-T-O-P.
Yeah,
so Chatter, C-H-A-T-T-E-R, Estop. And so it's Cole's Odyssey. So yes. Cole's Odyssey is C-O-L-E-S, Odyssey, O-D-Y-S-S-E-Y. And it's the Omega and Alpha books.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I should also point out that you did say the book is pretty hefty, and I realized this, so I also split them in half into part 1 and part 2. Now, if you get each part, you're not missing out on anything. I made sure they both have the in-book map, they both have the about the author, table of contents. So if you get part 1 and you say, hey, I like this, I want to get part 2, you're not going to be missing out on any contents. Don't worry about that. But it is cheaper because it is, half the book. And both of these are available digitally as well. So there's 6 books total on Amazon. All of them are available for digital and print copies.
Okay. I love that. Love that. So okay, so now you're writing. Are you writing the 3rd book?
The 3rd and 4th. I write them in tandem.
Oh, okay. So you write them in tandem. So what do you do? What's the process? Like you write on Alpha for a while, and then you decide to go to the other book and write on Omega. Just like and like I should write on him and round out his character a little differently.
Well, first I have an idea of where I want each book to go, and then I break down each act where I want it to go. and then I lay out a synopsis for each chapter, and then I flip a coin whose chapter I'm going to do. So whose I'm going to do first. So I'll do chapter 1 alpha, then chapter 1 omega, and flip a coin. And then whichever one that is, alpha, then omega, and flip a coin. Oh, this time it's omega, then alpha. Mm-hmm.
I love it. But I'm very intrigued. Like, I can't wait to read them.
Oh, I really should
so
point
it's
out.
great.
Well, one final thing while we're running out of time.
Yes.
This lady, Gmo Dawn, very nice. She's a voice actress, quite talented, I'd say. She offered her voice to me, free of charge to act out the first chapter of the book. And that's available for free on YouTube. So if you just go to YouTube and type in Cole's Odyssey, you can hear an audio version of the very first chapter. And that could definitely give you an idea of, is this something you're going to be into?
So, Chatter, we are on our countdown. Thank you for being on the show. I'll give your grandma a big hug. Yeah, okay. Okay, lots of love. Blessings. Lots of love, everybody.
Goodbye.
Thank you for sharing your time with Tara Sutphen. Find out more about Tara's work, upcoming seminars, and meditations to help you fulfill your dreams by visiting her website at tarasutphen.com.